Hey Luminary, today we're talking about all things Cancer. Cancer is your power to create belonging and safety and healing in your business. It is also that energy that you get to use to protect the people inside and to create your boundaries in order for self care so that you can root to rise. So, in today's episode, we're talking all about Cancer. You have Cancer somewhere in your chart by planet or by house. So let's dig in. Welcome to the Savvy Luminary Podcast, Astrology for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, creator of the Astrobrand Method, business astrologer, brand designer, author, and Aquarius boss woman. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers like you illuminate and amplify your unique star powers so you can be the luminary you were born to be. So now that we're in Cancer season, and by the time you're listening to this episode, we have some pretty intense astrological energies building up. It's more important than ever to lean into your own soft power to create that sense of belonging. When I was giving the July horoscope, the July overview in the Business Starcast earlier this week, I was really talking about that sense to root to rise so that we can weather all of the storms that we feel in our lives. And I feel like in July, we are going to be a little bit not tested, but really asked to practice this sense of rooting in and creating our own sense of belonging and security. I mentioned in that episode that we are responsible for creating our own sense of emotional safety, our own sense of belonging. Nobody else can do that for us. So even if we felt that we don't belong, or we felt unsafe, and we start to look at honestly, if we've been blaming others for our sense of insecurity, like maybe a client isn't giving you the kind of security that you need, or if you're still in a job that you totally don't like and you never like, you always feel insecure if you're going to be laid off or fired, or maybe your family at some point told you that you weren't enough to be part of. Regardless if those things have happened to you, because you know what, they happen to all of us, we get to create our own sense of inner belonging so that no matter what happens outside of us, we are secure in what we need to feel in order to feel safe, what we need to create in terms of boundaries that says, like, hey, if you cross the line, that is not safe for me. This idea of consent, that we have to express what is okay, what is not. And this all comes from Cancer, our soft power, to be safe, and to create this sense of security and softness and kindness while still protecting all of those soft parts within us. So, yes, to soft power. Again, soft power doesn't take muscle, it takes heart. Before we dive into Cancer season, I wanted to let you know that in our next episode, I'll be interviewing Colette Baron Reed, like the amazing Oracle creator. And for today's episode, well, actually, not just for today's episode, for almost every single episode that I record, I always pull a card. And sometimes I share this with you, sometimes I don't share this with you. It really all depends. But today I pulled the card from Colette Baron Reed's um, the Spirit Animal Oracle. I asked, what is the energy that I need to bring to today's episode that I'll be talking about the Cancer Archetype? What is it that myself and my listeners need to know? And I pulled up the Snake Spirit. Time to heal. So let me just read this because it's so appropriate. So, Snake Spirit, Time to Heal, the oracle message written by Colette Baron Reed is: all of us need healing at times, and when Snake Spirit appears, it is time to repair, renew, and replenish yourself and your vulnerable heart. Self care and maintenance work are needed so that your vitality can rise. Give yourself that space to nourish your own well being. And vulnerability is necessary for friendship and partnerships to work, which means all of us will have tender emotions at times. Be gentle with yourself and others now. Shed the past and step into a new way of being, for vitality is rising in you. This might be a good time to honor the work you've done to heal, grow, and repair any damage within you, within those you care about, and within your community. Celebrate how far you have all come in your healing journey and all that you've created. Unburden yourself of anything that no longer supports wellness, prosperity, positive relationships, and well being, and open the door for healing to occur. Okay, so I am laughing with excitement because, like, how perfect is that for everything that I'm going to be talking about in the Cancer archetype and us in Cancer season? Again, if you haven't already listened to the July highlights, go back and listen to the previous episode where I drop all of the highlights that we're going to be experiencing in July with the cosmos. We have a lot of molting to do in July, so to say. And so for Snake Spirit to come up and say, prioritize your self-care. Well, this episode is going to teach you all about how to harness Cancer energy in your own chart. So even if you don't have a planet, you still have Cancer in your chart somewhere. And so let's unpack this. For today's episode, we need a mantra. And so if you're feeling insecure, if you're feeling like you can't be vulnerable, if you're feeling like you just don't have that grasp on emotional safety and creating your own belonging yet, I urge you to copy down this mantra somewhere, put it someplace where you can see it, and really plant this into the energy of your being. So if you are able, plant your feet firmly on the ground. We're going to be rooting to rise. So as you plant your feet firmly in the ground, imagine roots growing into the center of the earth that are flexible yet strong. Straighten your spine, raise your crown of your head to reach for the heavens, and feel yourself, your body, as a channel between heaven and earth, the stars and yourself. Take a nice clearing breath and repeat after me. I create safe spaces and belonging for myself and others through my business. And repeat again. I create safe spaces and belonging for myself and others through my business. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so let's dig in. So today in this episode, we're going to be talking all about what the Cancer archetype is and why it's so important in your business. We're going to be looking at what happens when you're not using your Cancer energy and how to unlock Cancer in your business and brand by looking at Cancer by planet and Cancer by house. So let's dig in. So what is the Cancer archetype? So if we just start to look at the Cancer archetype, it is a water element. It is a cardinal modality. It is the ruler of the fourth house. The moon rules the sign of Cancer, and the traditional symbol is the crab. Cancer sits on the opposite side of the chart from Capricorn, where it's highlighting the safety and security axes. So as a water sign, we have three water signs: Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So with Cancer, the cardinal of the water sign, it's the first of the water signs, and it is creating space. It is holding space. I remember the first time I heard somebody say hold space. I think this must have been 15 years ago, and I went to Harbin Hot Springs, which is kind of this oasis, and a clothing optional water oasis right outside of the San Francisco Bay Area. And this is like my first time, like my first foray into anything a little bit alternative. So I definitely was not comfortable. I was kind of tense, and this is like my first real massage. And this woman came in, and she was like this really round and voluptuous woman, and she was wearing this black velvet dress, and she was everything that you could imagine like the divine mother to look like. She kind of had the body shape of like the Venus And she came in and she started talking in this language that I'd never heard this language before. She's like, okay, take off your clothes, get onto the massage table. And she's like, you can figure out your checking account, you can reconcile your books, you can like hold all your worries. But where I'm taking you, I just want to hold space for you to just be. I was thinking to myself at that time, like, what the heck is she talking about? But in reality, she was creating that safe space for me to be naked on her table, to receive her healing touch, and it was like the most epic experience I had ever had. All because she set the space for me to just be, for me to be included, and for her to accept me and my body and wherever I was at. And that is what Cancer archetype is. And that water ability is the healing ability. Now, there's a lot of different archetypes for healing that are represented in the zodiac, but for water signs, this healing comes from looking at dis-ease from our emotional sense. And Cancer archetype creates that security, that safe space, because we know that if we're not feeling safe and secure in our own abilities or in our own enoughness or in our own vulnerabilities, if we're not feeling safe, we're not able to process emotions. We're not able to let go of things. We're not able to break down the shells that we've built around our hearts and do the risky things that are in alignment. We might be doing risky things, but they're based on fear, and that doesn't get us anywhere. And so the water signs particularly are healing because they are looking at the emotional dis-ease, and Cancer is the first step to hold space, to create protected spaces of inclusion, acceptance, and tolerance. After Cancer is able to hold that space for healing to happen, then she hands it off to Scorpio, where then the deep work comes. Like, okay, we're feeling safe, we're all protected. Now let's dive into the depths and like befriend our shadows. But we're not talking about Scorpio today. So if you have any Cancer if you have a lot of Cancer like sun or moon or rising, or maybe on your midheaven, or you have moon at your rising sign, then really when you're working in your highest Cancer archetype powers, your soft powers, you are simply holding space and holding emotional space. As we have learned, we're still learning how to ask for the value exchange and holding space, but we all need to hold this emotional space and do this emotional labor that comes from this soft spot of Cancer. This, even though it's soft, it doesn't mean that it's powerful. It doesn't mean it is weak. Remember, as a water element, water can seep through everything. It can permeate everything. It has no boundaries unless it's in some kind of container. And water also has the ability to break things down. There's nothing that can withstand water. So remember that if you have a lot of water in your chart, you're using this permeability, these ideas of like the soft power that in our up until recently in our culture have really been talked down upon, but they are so strong. Cancer archetype as a cardinal. So we have our cardinal signs, which are the beginners of each of the seasons. So of course, Cancer ignites the solstice, which for in the northern hemisphere is about summer, and in the southern hemisphere is about winter. And then we have Libra, which starts fall, Capricorn, which starts winter, and Aries that starts spring. So cardinal energy is starting energy. It's not necessarily sustaining energy. It likes to get things started and then it likes to move on. The cardinal energy sometimes needs help with executing things or taking things, like finishing things, or even going much deeper. But we all need that spark of energy that cardinal brings. So Cancer, again, getting things started. Earlier, I was saying that on the polarity, Cancer sits across the chart from Capricorn. If we're looking at our chart where Aries might be at the rising, ruling the first house, Cancer is at the very, very, very bottom, ruling the fourth house. And then Capricorn up at the very top, ruling the 10th house. And so the fourth house, 10th house axes comes from this place of creating security, creating safety, and the responsibility that we need in order to accomplish that creation of safety and security. And so Cancer and Capricorn are essentially opposite ends of like the same energetic polarity on the same energy spectrum. Because again, for Capricorn, for us to accomplish our goals, we need to feel grounded and rooted in our emotional heart center from Cancer. And so, again, safety, security, responsibility are the commonalities between the Cancer and Capricorn archetype. Of course, the symbols of Cancer, we have the crab, we have the divine mother, we have the moon. And if we start to look at just the traditional symbol of the crab, we notice the first thing that we notice is the hard exterior shell. And the crab has these claws that, hey, if you're not going to play by the rules, these claws are going to come out and like come get you. But also, crabs, if you notice, they don't have a voice box. They're not traditionally known to use words. So sometimes, if you have a lot of Cancer energy, again, sun, moon, rising, maybe the midheaven or your moon sign on your rising sign, those would be some examples of having a lot of Cancer in your chart, in your archetype for your business. Then oftentimes the way that you're communicating or leading or guiding is actually by not using words. I know for me with my son, if I start screaming at him, and yes, I do that. I'm honest. Like sometimes he just gets me, and like I get super frustrated after I asked him kindly for 10 times that he just doesn't listen, and then I start screaming. But sometimes when we're at the park and he starts to look at me and I can see what he's doing, and it's just that quick look and that kind of like nod of the finger, no vocalizations, no words, no sound, and then he stops exactly what he's doing. So sometimes, if with the crab and with a lot of Cancer energy, you're most productive and most communicative, most expressive when you're not using words. Of course, as the divine mother and the divine caretaker, if you have Cancer archetype, a really strong Cancer archetype in your business, the divine mother is here to create acceptance. It's receptive, it's caring and nurturing and protective. And so the moon represents the divine mother, and the divine mother is a caretaker. But also remember that if you have this kind of caretaking energy in your chart, it doesn't mean to caretake at the expense of yourself. The divine mother is very protective, and she has to protect her own energy. Again, putting the face mask on yourself before, if you're on an airplane, before you put it on your children. You have to take care of yourself first. If you notice yourself just caretaking and being a martyr, you are not using your Cancer archetype at the highest level. You're using it at the shadow level. The Cancer archetype needs to feel, it needs to care, it needs to be sensitive. And because feelings can be so hard sometimes, again, it's really important to have containers about like what's okay, and expressing your emotions, even if you judge them as bad, not seeing them as bad. We all need anger, we all need sadness, we all need happiness, we all need joy, all of the emotions. And so Cancer gives us the ability to feel all of it, permission to feel. When we're looking at the fourth house for Cancer, fourth house in traditional astrology, of course, represents our family, it represents our legacy, it represents our roots, it represents that sense of security and belonging. But it rules the IC. So we can think about, from when we're at the very beginning of our chat, where we're talking about that root to rise, as we're grounding our feet into the ground and imagining that cord into the middle of the earth. That's our IC. That's our foundation. And we all need deep foundational roots in order to grow. So that's why you think about the more success that you gain, you start to revisit old patterns over and over and over again, because you see them in a different perspective. It's part of that spiral journey journey that we all go on. And so we don't want to get stuck and spiral down. We want to like keep on growing and keep on re-examining all of those old hurts, all of those old vulnerabilities until we can circle through them so quickly and recognize them and say, thank you, vulnerability, for giving me the tools and the resources and the emotional expertise and experience so that now I can grow even stronger. So that was all for traditional astrology, but then now how do we move the fourth house into our business? So of course, now in our business, when we're thinking about families in our business, this is about safe communities. So all of us are delivering a service or a product, and our clients are basically, and the people that love us, like our fans or our newsletters, the people that are in our communities, those are the families of our business. And so just how in the Cancer heart archetype at the highest level is creating a safe emotional place for family where the home is, where the heart is. In your business, you're creating that safe emotional space for your community, letting people know who belongs there, who doesn't belong there. And of course, we're talking about belonging not in this place of like excluding people based on race, sex, or any of those other terrible things, but in terms of belonging, like, do you have the experience to belong here? Do we have these certain shared values and expectations? Are you ready to do this kind of work? That's the kind of belonging that we have to get really clear on when we're building our safe communities in our business. And then also having those guidelines in our communities, in our website, with client expectations about what happens when expectations and security and safety are not being met. Because remember, as Cancer archetype, it's protective. But protective isn't just about cancel culture, okay? It's not just about saying like, oh, you did something wrong and now you're out. It's about gaining understanding, creating the next step of action so that people know that when they've crossed the line and what the repercussions are. So it's up to us to clearly communicate what the expectations are, to give warnings when an expectation is not met, and then to create the action steps, clear action steps of what happens when things do not go as needed. Because as the holder of this safe space, your responsibility is to protect everybody in your community. Of course, this is through your business. Now, if you have a lot of activity in your fourth house, you may have a family business, or I remember I was talking with somebody in my moon QA on my free Facebook, the Savvy Luminary. I was looking at somebody's chart and they had Sagittarius in the fourth house and they had so much energy in the fourth house. And I was like, there's some kind of like family legacy or family kind of business before. And she was saying, well, actually, there's a lot of family hurt in terms of like having not being able to be musicians in the family and a lot of religious oppression. And I was like, whoa, my goodness. Okay, well, here is a clear shadow version of Sagittarius and the moon being in the fourth house. And we were exploring how do we reflect that light and change it from shadow, bring it to the light, to use it in its highest potential. Because of course, all of these energies have the lowest vibration and its highest vibration of being the ultimate potential that we're reaching into. So it was so interesting to see her chart just being like just straight up symbolism of all the shadows in her family legacy that she was now healing in her own business. Fourth house energies could also, or Cancer energies could also be around investing around real estate. And when we're talking about real estate, we're talking really about the home that we live in, or the family land that is to be used to create a legacy for our descendants. So of course, remember that the Cancer archetype in our business, that soft power, that power to create belonging and security, is so healing. It's so gentle and kind and nurturing. It is so sensitive that it can feel. And it is this sense of being feminine in more that it is yin and receptive versus the very, binary feminine, masculine. If I'm talking about femininity here, I'm talking about being yin and being slow and receptive versus that kind of masculine yang about like going out and doing things. So that's how I want to talk about that. The Cancer archetype is about creating safety, safe emotional spaces, about creating acceptance and belonging and tolerance. And by creating that protection by expressing what is required and the expectations of working with you in your business or being part of your groups or your communities, and what happens when people are not following those rules, because you are here to be that kind of gatekeeper of your safe and inclusive space. Remember, this belonging and acceptance, there's so many layers. First of all, on a personal layer, we have to create our own belonging and acceptance. And then in our businesses, in our community, in that kind of level, we're creating safe spaces through our business. And in our businesses, of course, we're not here to serve everyone. So not everybody can be inclusive, like be included and belong. But these rules of inclusivity and belonging are not created from these places of racism or exclusionary or otherness, right? They're based on experience and values and the results that you want to create. That's how you create belonging and acceptance and tolerance in your business. And then, of course, on a societal and a collective level, this is all of us learning about creating belonging and safety, and how we are all taking down those very, very shadow energies of Cancer and otherness and racism. That's the Cancer and that Sagittarius archetype that kind of rule over belonging and social justice, and how we're really taking down and rebuilding new in those spaces. Now that we've taken a deep dive into the Cancer archetype, let's talk about why it's so important in your business, because we all need the Cancer archetype in our business. First of all, it to build, again, that emotional and physical security. Of course, that security starts with you and it ripples out into your community. We all deserve to live in safe spaces. We all deserve to feel a sense of belonging and inclusiveness. So, how are you building that emotional security in your business, in your communities, in the people that you serve? For your customers to have the results that they desire to have, they need to feel safe in order to grow and to have all of the ups and downs. Because of course, progress isn't just straight up. It's a process of all the slips and the slides and the celebrations and the rallies, all of the ups and the downs. And so how do we create that safety for all of the ups and downs for our clients to get the results that they need to get? Or how do they get the results that you promised to give them? And of course, we have to remember that Cancer in our business, part of that creating that belonging and inclusion for ourselves, is about self-care. I talked a lot about self-care when I was going through the July Business Starcast, because self-care isn't just about getting your manicures or your pedicures. It's also about resting and taking naps and knowing when you need to stop working, when you need to take a break, when you need to heal, when you need to let go and say no to things. Capricorn is the energy that really allows us to say no. And Cancer is an extension of that Capricorn energy. So knowing your boundaries is so important for your own sense of security. And of course, as you build your own sense of security, as you fill your emotional cup, you are able to take those bigger leaps of faith that allow you to grow yourself in your business. So of course, now you're understanding why Cancer archetype is so important in our business, to hold space for growth to happen for our customers, for ourselves, so that we have the boundaries to protect ourselves and our communities, and so that we can practice self-care, so that we can fill our emotional cup, so that we can take those big leaps forward. Now, what happens when we're not using Cancer archetype and our soft power in our business. Because, of course, systematically in the West, we've been taught the shadows of Cancer archetype, right? Like, don't trust others, exclude people that don't belong, other people are not safe. It's better. And then, of course, the one sticker that I notice a lot for especially spiritual entrepreneurs is that the idea that it's better to care for others than to be cared for, that sense of like the martyrdom. Oh no, right? We are here to blow up those systematic structures about being the caretaker and about trusting others, because we are done serving capitalistic and patriarchal hierarchies in societies. When we're not using our Cancer archetype, we're not prioritizing our own self care. We're not validating our own feelings. We're not able to trust our intuition. And oh my gosh, I want all of us to be able to really tap in and trust our intuition. And intuition is different from fear. When you have that little voice in your head, if it has an emotional charge, remember that's fear, that's not intuition. Intuition is almost always a steady, stable thing. Do this, don't do this. Okay. When we don't understand what we need for success or recognition or our emotional security, we are not thriving. And then some things on a societal level that I really hope that we are changing, that goes to that shadow of Cancer. On a societal level, I want us to start valuing caretaking, because some of the most undervalued and underpaid jobs all have to do around caretaking, whether this is adult care or nursing or childcare or teaching at that young level. We do not pay our caretakers nearly enough, and this has to change in our society, and it starts with us. The other thing that we need to change in the societal level that we can start to think about and do in our businesses is about valuing emotional intelligence. Again, valuing that ability to just hold space. So, when we're able to create emotional security and belonging in our business for necessary growth and success, we are able to create our own emotional security. We are able to create our own sense of belonging. We're able to include others and let them know clearly of our expectations. We are able to create and protect safe spaces with our boundaries, and we are able to take care of others, but not at the expense of ourselves. All of this for our Cancer archetype. Now, you may have a little bit of Cancer wounds. And so when we're looking at wounds, we're talking about karmic energies and karmic planets in terms of this is part of our soul's history. We come into this life needing to learn these energies. So maybe you have Cancer intercepted. So if you look at your chart and you're using a non-whole house system chart, like maybe you're using Placidus and you don't have Cancer on one of the cusps, that means that your Cancer archetype, your Cancer sign, is embedded in another house without a doorway into it, called an interception. And so that means that Cancer really is one of your hidden gifts, one of your hidden gifts that you need to unlock through the key of Gemini, because Gemini is the sign that happens right before Cancer. And so if you have Cancer that is locked up, that sometimes it's really hard for you to gain understanding of your emotional needs or your boundaries. And in order to do that, you need to use Gemini. You need to speak your emotions to process them. You need to communicate. You need to ask questions in order to really harness your Cancer archetype. Now, if you have one of those strong Cancer moons, I know that there are a bunch of us here, listeners, who have that Cancer moon. And Cancer is one of our karmic planets. And so when we look at our moon signs, of course, we were talking about all of the benefits of the moon sign. But if we start to look at some of the shadows of the moon sign, the shadows of our moon sign talk to us about where we need healing and where we need to heal those stories that we might have received from our family. And if you have a Cancer moon sign, you are definitely tapped into your ancestral healing. You might have some family stories of codependency or enabling. You have this need to feel emotionally secure, but maybe at some point in your childhood or in your early life experiences, you were not allowed to, you didn't have that sense of emotional security, likely from your inability to get your needs met from a caretaker. And so, how do these stories, looking at those stories, if you have a Cancer moon, do any of these kind of Cancer wounds have, are they still playing out in your business? And if they are, get curious with what needs acceptance and healing for you with your Cancer moon. Now, if you have Cancer in your Saturn in Cancer, this is about turning your emotional doubt and mastery, or your doubt and your emotional doubt, or your caretaking doubt, or your safe spaces doubt into mastery. Saturn is represents that transition from doubt to mastery, from restraint to responsibility, from too responsible for others to responsible to myself first. And so, of course, in Cancer, this is about creating mastery around your emotions, where maybe it wasn't safe for you to have emotions before, that you bottled them all up, but now that you're able to master how to clearly express yourself and your needs. Or maybe that it wasn't safe for you to care for others, or for others to care for you, or maybe have this sense of compassion, where now you are now mastering that ability to care for yourself and to have compassion for yourself first before you can have it for others. If you have Chiron in Cancer, these are some family wounds that you have that may never heal. However, these wounds are so valuable because if you have Chiron, your never ending, your never healing wounds become wisdom. So all of the things that you've learned to accommodate those wounds are now what you're supposed to teach and offer as valuable assets when you share vulnerably what you've learned. And then if you have your South Node in the fourth house or in Cancer, this is about not getting stuck in enabling or overgiving or rescuing, or getting stuck in this place of like feeling like you're never going to be healed, and now moving into the focus and grounding and strategy of Capricorn. So let's talk about some ways that you can unlock Cancer soft power in your brand and business. Of course, if you have a strong Cancer archetype, you may have your sun, your moon, or your rising in Cancer, or you might have your moon on your rising sign, or your 10th house cusp, your midheaven. If you have really strong placements of Cancer or your moon in those areas, all the more you have to bring these energies out through your business and your brand. Some strong Cancer brands would be building safe spaces and communities. They would definitely be doing some kind of healing or space holding, or cultivating kindness through your business, or doing some kind of caretaking business. If you also have a strong Cancer brand, you might be really family forward, thinking about legacy, or even building real estate, where you're building a business around building safe homes. Some of the people that come to mind that have really strong Cancer archetypes, first of all, we have like Meghan Markle. If we think about her and her ties to the royal family, but her commitment to her family and protecting that. And she's such a great example of stepping away from the limelight and prioritizing her own self-care in order to really protect her mental health and protect her family's mental health. So, of course, Meghan Markle is a Cancer rising with her beautiful Libra moon. Oh my goodness, I love it. She also has her Aries midheaven and her Leo sun very close. Meghan Markle just has such a powerful chart, but really showing up as that kind of divine mother, divine caretaker for her and her family. And then, of course, in her work, all of her work that she was doing, even before she became part of the royal family, was just, she had such a wonderful way of giving back and creating emotional security for others. Of course, next week I'll be interviewing Colette Baron Reed for Cancer season, and she has so much powerful Cancer energy. She has beautiful Cancer sun in the 10th house with her Cancer midheaven. So, of course, she is delivering on her ultimate mission using that Cancer archetype of holding space for healing, of holding space to get curious as to what is in the cards for you with like spirituality, with all of her beautiful oracle cards. Her oracle cards are just so wonderful. They're so protective. You can feel them when you touch them and when you ask them questions, that everything about the answers and the guidance that they provide is so nurturing. So, do you have Cancer in your chart? Let's look at Cancer by planet, because if you have a planetary energy in Cancer, this is the energy that you have to build acceptance and belonging in your business. So, again, if you have the sun in Cancer, you radiate kindness and caring as your superpowered zone of genius. If you have one of those superpowered moon signs at home in Cancer, you need to feel emotionally safe in order to be successful and recognized. If you have your Cancer rising, you lead and initiate by holding space and self for others. I remember hearing somebody who had a Cancer rising that when she had permission, that all she had to do to be a great leader and guide was to hold space. It validated so many energies for her, that she was trying so hard to be some kind of like leader that she wasn't. But when she found out that all she had to do was hold emotional space for others, it opened her up to so many possibilities. If you have your Mercury in Cancer, you communicate often non-verbally with an accepting heart. If you have Venus in Cancer, you attract and partner with community based values and belonging. If you have Mars in Cancer, you are motivated by emotional safety, security, and acceptance. If you have Jupiter in Cancer, you expand your purpose with compassion and your ability to hold safe spaces. If you have Saturn in Cancer, you're here to master and sustain and preserve your boundaries for self care so that you can focus. Now, if you were born between 1948 and 1956 and you have Uranus in Cancer, you are here to innovate and evolve to create radical acceptance. Yes, boomer, that's you. You are here to create radical acceptance as a generation. I think you all did a good job with setting the stage for radical acceptance. Now, if you have Chiron in Cancer, we chatted a little bit about that with our wounds earlier. You are here to recognize your deep family and enabling wounds and share what you have learned through your offers in your business. If you have your North Node in Cancer, you are here to stretch into healing, caring, and kindness to direct your business. And then if you have your South Node in Cancer, yes, you can fall back on what you already know about being a caretaker without getting stuck there. Now, if I have any listeners that have Neptune in Cancer, you would have been born between 1902 and 1915. If you do, please reach out. I would love to give you an Astro Brown reading. Then, if you have Neptune in Cancer, you are here to blend into that feeling of vast compassion. I think about my grandmother, and she was born in this time period, and oh my gosh, she had some of this beautiful part of that vast compassion. Around the same time, if you had Pluto in Cancer, you were born between 1913 and 1939. Again, if you have Pluto in Cancer and you are a listener to this podcast, please reach out. I would love to offer you a free reading. You were here to transform the power and safety of inclusion. And just thinking about Pluto in Cancer and all of the terrible world events that went on around safety and inclusion and belonging, and how that really shaped the world that we are still living in. So remember, if you have Cancer by planet, this is a gift that you were born with that you must use with responsibility and stretching into that highest potential of that energy. Now, if you're like me, I don't actually have any planets in Cancer, but I still have Cancer by house. And so we all have this Cancer element in our charts somewhere. And so if you start to look at your chart and look at where the house that Cancer rules, this is the place in your business where you have the energy to create safety in your business. So find the house cusp ruled by Cancer, and that house is the area in your business where you need to create inclusive, safe spaces, prioritize your own self-care and emotional security so that you can feel successful. So remember, the Cancer energy is I create safety, inclusion, prioritize self-care and emotional security in your businesses. So here we go. So if you have Cancer on the first house, you are a Cancer rising. We talked a little bit about that earlier. So you are supposed to create safety and inclusion in your inclusive brand identity and leadership. If you have your second house as the ruler of Cancer, you might be a Gemini rising. And for you, you're creating safety and inclusion and prioritizing your self-care as you're in your business's brand values and added value of emotional security through your offers. So to clarify for that one, this one is very personal for me because I have second house Cancer. When I think about it, what I am really creating, even though I'm teaching my clients astrology, I'm creating acceptance and validation of people's emotions so that they can feel really taken care of in order to feel successful. And see how that turns into the added value of my business. Oh, I just love my Cancer in my second house. So even though I don't have any other Cancer in my chart, it's very important in my brand and business because that is what I'm promising people is security, emotional security and validation in themselves as they learn about their own astrology to empower themselves in their business. If you have third house ruled by Cancer, you might be a Taurus rising. And here you are creating safety and inclusion through your self-love oriented messaging and communications. If Cancer is ruling your fourth house, you might be an Aries rising and you are creating safety and inclusion in your business's ability to build safe spaces that provide financially for your family. If you have Cancer ruling your fifth house, you might be a Pisces rising, and you are here to create safety and inclusion in your business's healing experiences that allow you to practice self-care. If you have the sixth house ruled by Cancer, you might be an Aquarius rising. And here you're building these safe spaces in your business's ability to serve others and daily routines that are emotionally grounded. If you have Cancer ruling your seventh house, you might be a Capricorn rising, and you are here to create safety and inclusion through your business's partnerships with caretakers and healers. If you have Cancer ruling your eighth house, you might be a Sagittarius rising, and you are here to create safety and inclusion through your business's leveraged family money and resources to add value. If you have Cancer ruling your ninth house, you may be a Scorpio rising, and you are here to create safety and inclusion through your business's healing journeys that allow you to expand emotional well-being. If you have Cancer on the 10th house, or you might be a Libra rising, and for you, you are here to create safety and inclusion through your business's primary mission so that you can deliver on kindness and caring. So similar to Colette Baron Reed. If you have Cancer on the 11th house, you may be a Virgo rising. And if you're Virgo rising, you are here to create safety and inclusion through your business's safe communities and friend networks that provide maybe over a shared cause of providing housing or other care. That would be your social impact for you at the 11th house. And then if you have Cancer on the 12th house, you may be a Leo rising, and you are meant to create safety and inclusion through your business's charitable opportunities so that others may feel safe. So that is all that I have for Cancer's archetype. And in summary, how are you building inclusion, safe spaces, nurturing acceptance, and family-like community for yourself and your customers? That is the energy that you need with Cancer soft powers. See how and where you have Cancer in your chart, somewhere by house or by planet, to see how you're supposed to show up and where you're supposed to create those safe spaces. And look at where in your life or business you are meant to carry through this caring energy. Remember that all of this is a gift, and with a gift comes great responsibility to use, appreciate, and share. What will you do with your protective Cancer energy in your business? Please let me know. Before we close out today, I just wanted to repeat the mantra. Remember to save this somewhere and repeat this to yourself often. I create safe spaces and belonging for myself and others through my business. All right, Luminary, have a beautiful day. Thank you for listening. The greatest thing that you could do to me to pass things forward is to head over to Apple iTunes and leave a rating and review for this podcast. Let others know what you think, and each rating and review helps this podcast be more visible to listeners like you.